Hi, and welcome to another installment of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed. I am your host, Cuddy Cudworth, the UK's leading mind management coach. To be fair, Dr. Angie, that is self-titled, in all fairness. I just made that up as a great business marketing tool, to be fair. But welcome to the Mind Management Mentors podcast. I'm a big believer, if it's in the mind, it can be managed. Now, when we say if it's in the mind, it can be managed, meaning that the lack of confidence that we can have and our sabotaging behaviors and the subject that we're going to be talking about today is an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. Not for you and I, obviously, but we're going to be talking about the ability and the difference between how we communicate and how we can communicate and the difference between aggressive communication and assertive communication. Because you are an assertive voice coach and communication, if I'm right on that.
Yeah, I'm an assertiveness coach. That's what I call
Perfect.
myself.
I love it. So, as if you were on blind date, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
I'm Ante. I'm based in Scotland, near Glasgow. I'm originally from Germany. I have an academic background. I've got a degree in business engineering, a master's, and a PhD in information studies. And I've done work around German teaching, and because I love language and psychology, and communication is also part of it. So I'm the founder of Assertive Voices. That's my business. As I said, I'm an assertiveness coach. I help female founders and women in business speak up in important conversations, in meetings with clients or potential business partners, set boundaries, things like that. And I also offered a few books that can be found on Amazon around speaking and communication anxiety, particularly. And that's what I do.
I could definitely see there would be a communicate. And you know what? I've worked in. I mean, that's a great CV of skills, Dr. Angie. To be fair, and thank you very much for coming on to the Mind Management Mentors podcast. Very much appreciated. But there's a lot to unpack there because communication in any kind of situation is it's not easy for a lot of people, isn't it? To be fair, and I know. We talked just before we started the podcast. We said, what's the difference between being assertive, and being aggressive? And then you said, actually, there's also being passive. So, to help our listeners listen to know where they are, how would you define someone being assertive, someone being aggressive, and someone being passive?
Yeah, I think communication is very important in our world because everybody expects you to communicate well, to speak in a certain way. And some people struggle, and some people are not assertive as such, and that causes some problems. So, for example, assertive means you speak up for your needs and you say your thoughts or your emotions or whatever you want to say in a respectful way without putting anyone down or without holding back or something like that. You just say it and you're just yourself, and that's assertive. And that's basically in the middle between aggressive and passive. Because when you're passive, you're maybe very quiet and you don't speak up. And so nobody knows what you need. And that's not really good for you, that you never get what you want. If you see it like that, maybe you're shy, but it could be other reasons. On the other hand, if you're aggressive, then you're too much in a certain way. Maybe you're too loud, you're dominant, and you kind of are not polite to people, so they might not like you. So that's not optimal either. And you could even be passive aggressive, which means you're passive on the outside, but internally you're aggressive, you're angry that you're not talking the way you should and getting what you want. So you see, assertive is in the middle, and this is the optimal communication style that you could have. And the good news is you can learn to be more assertive. So there are certain techniques you can use to be more assertive and to kind of come across in a better way when you communicate.
That's a lot. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. So now I've got some questions because what's the right? So help me out because I know I try to be as self-aware as possible. I genuinely do. And I know I have a tendency, I can be passive aggressive, right? And I am aware of that. I think self-awareness is a powerful tool that I
Yes.
know I can be passive aggressive because is sarcasm the same as being passive aggressive?
Yeah, it could be seen as that. So basically, you're not directly saying what's going on. You're trying to hide this. So you're having a problem with this. So that's why you address it, but you don't address it directly. You make a joke or whatever you do. Maybe you use a silent treatment or sulking or anything that is just not really directly clearly saying. So that could be seen as passive aggressive in that way.
So I'm just trying to think. It's funny because my communication changes all over the place. So I when in my relationship with my wife, I'm very passive, just passive. But I know in business, I'm quite assertive, and I know that there's a difference between that. I genuinely understand that.
Hmm.
So there's why is it people don't know or understand what can because we're going to talk about techniques and things like that for people to be able to watch this podcast and go, right, now I can thank you, Angie, thank you for giving us that answer. Now I can go, where does the lack of wanting to be able to communicate pop up in business meetings?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how you grew up, the environment you were in, maybe even what you inherited, how you are, and all such things. So, and then there's things like you may want to keep the peace and you don't want to get in conflict with anyone, or you want to people please, like you want to please the other person, and so you don't bring up anything that bothers you because you don't know how to do that without hurting them. So maybe you might not know the right language or how to do that. So that could be things that people may struggle with. But it depends on the situation. And as you said, it depends on who you speak with. So obviously you would talk differently to your wife, to your business partner, to a client, to a child, or so you really adapt to the situation and you choose how you behave and what words you use and also body language and all the things that maybe happen automatically even. So you might not be aware what actually happens and if you are doing the right things that you could do if you had assertiveness training, for example.
Actually, it's a really good point, to be fair. And so when I'm listening to you talk and I'm going through a, a lot of things that you talked about there was actually like people pleasing, not feeling comfortable to be able to talk. They would often fall under possible trauma responses as well.
Yeah, it could be, but I wouldn't really say that is the only reason. I
Yes,
mean, there are different things that can happen to people, or that just you had this education, you learned it that way from your parents or teachers, or you grew up in a different culture. Could also be something that you behave in a certain way, and then you go to a different country and people expect something different, or if you're a woman or a man and you might have learned different ways how you should be in the past just because of your gender, or it could be age related. There could be so many different things that could be the reason why it is like this at the moment.
that's really, really so true. So true. And I can see, so let's say a lady comes to you and they're in corporate the world. There's a business meeting every month. They have to sit down. What is a leader looking for from the people around them? Because they're good. A good leader is going to look for that communication. They want to be given feedback, don't they? But will it often come from what they believe as speaking up is? Because that now we're going into belief systems of why some people can't feel comfortable talking, why some people can't feel that they can speak their mind in that moment without it sounding aggressive. So I'm a corporate lady who's in business meetings, and how do I come to you and say, look, I'd like to be more assertive? What would you say to me? Three things that would create more assertiveness and move it, because then we'll talk about being less aggressive as well, because there's a difference, isn't there? So let's go for three key markers for how to be more assertive.
One thing is mindset, as you said. So you
Mhm.
have to believe in yourself. You have to believe you can do it. So you can tell yourself that you're assertive and things like that, like positive affirmations you can do. Um, if you're struggling, another thing is your voice, not only what you say, which is also a thing.
Yeah.
In terms of content, it could be that you are not talking the way you could. So, for example, to sound assertive, you could use I statements. So you don't say, um, I don't like what you do. So, like you're blaming someone, but you say, I noticed this and I feel like this about it, and I would be happy if it was so and so. So you're talking about yourself more and not about the other person.
Oh,
Then
that's
it's
beautiful.
how you speak, like the volume, tone of voice, the speed, things like that, and your body language. If you look the other person in the eye, if you smile, what you do with your arms, things like that. So that would be things you could be looking for.
I love it. Congruency.
Mhm.
Congruency, when it comes to communication, I've always found to be a really powerful tool of the words that we're speaking, that our body matches that. What part does congruency play, Angie?
Yeah, I think it's important that you kind of mirroring people. And when you, as a leader, you look for someone who communicates well, that's right, because that's just what we do. And you want people's feedback. And then there's the ability to actually give feedback in a constructive way. And then on the other hand, to receive feedback and not be offended. So you want to give feedback in a way that it is about the behavior and not about the person, so that it is really helpful and that it can be changed. So
Perfect. I
that
love
would
it.
be things.
Who would be, if you were going to go into a business and you were going to say, this is a good example of an assertive speaker, this is a good example, who from the world would you say this is an assertive speaker? An assertive, confident speaker. Who would be a good example for that?
I would say most celebrities or politicians, people that are used to speaking in public, I think they have learned what they need to do, and maybe also actors. So I don't want to name anyone specifically, but I think that's people who know what they're doing and they come across as confident and assertive.
Fantastic. I love it. Is there any what? Go on, Alchie. Pick one person who you would say that person there is an assertive speaker.
Hmm, I don't know.
Ah,
I could name so many, really. Do you know
perfect.
anyone?
Well, no, because I mean, again, what we're talking about is we always want a good example of. So I love modeling. I believe modeling people that reflects something within me that I'm like I could learn how to do that. So I'm going to model this person.
Mm,
I had one of my old cruise directors, hotel directors. And I always admired his leadership skills, and I just modeled his behavior. I watched
Hmm.
him, I learned what
Hmm.
he did, and saw how he spoke. But in the world of communication at this moment in time, I have always thought that I think Stephen Bartlett is a great speaker.
Hmm.
I've always felt that when I watch him, I like what he says. He seems well crafted. I think Stephen Bartlett is a great communicator. But I was trying to think, is there anybody else who's like, oh, I really
Yeah.
could learn. I'd like to learn that skill from being assertive speaker. Because
Maybe Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
absolutely. Tony Robbins is a great
Yeah.
speaker, an assertive speaker. Yes. So you would
Yeah.
say Tony Robbins is a great speaker. Good.
Yeah. But I'd also like to mention assertiveness doesn't necessarily mean being loud. You can also be quietly confident, and quietly assertive, because it just means you're standing up for yourself. It doesn't mean you need to shout, which could be aggressive if you think about it like that. It's just you are yourself and you have to be the way you are. And so, for example, if you have a gentle voice, then you might struggle with being
Yeah,
too loud, but that's not required. It's just that you are confident and doing the things you want to do in a respectful way.
that's bang on. That's absolutely bang on. So, what's an aggressive speaker then? We've talked about assertive and having confidence and getting people into that mode. There's something that I had to do years ago. I had a panic attack. And I was always found myself to be a confident speaker, but I had a panic attack. And I had a massive collapse of me as a human being before going and doing an audition for something. It was an audition for a job that I wanted. And I had to do an audition for 3 minutes, just stand up in front of somebody, three people, and talk. And I had gone through everything that I thought I was supposed to do to be able to do that. And I just had, oh my God, the conversations I had internally was just absolutely atrocious, to be fair. I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't get my words out. My throat felt like it had closed up. And I remember that was the turning point in my life where it was like, right, I need to learn a lot of things. I thought I knew a lot. And the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything whatsoever. And that's a good thing because that keeps us open to learning things like that. Is there any, is there two things that you could give somebody to help that anxiety decrease and that stress to decrease before they go and do a public speaking? What two things could they do, Angie?
They could use relaxation techniques. So, for example, breathing. And what you can do is take a few deep breaths before the speech starts,
Yeah,
like deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth for a couple of minutes. So that may help calm down and reduce the heart rate and all the symptoms in the body that they might experience. And another thing is power poses, for example.
that
So
was it.
they could go somewhere without alone in the toilet or somewhere and kind of do this or just speak positively to themselves like, okay, it's fine, I'll do this. It's okay. People don't look at what I'm doing or they don't laugh at me. They just think what they think about themselves and they will like my speech and things like that. And be like Superman, for example. Just because that helps to get the right state in the body to be ready for this.
And that was the power pose or the superhero pose was an Amy Cuddy thing.
Hmm.
And I remember
Well,
finding her name and going, wow, same name as me. We're not related in any way whatsoever. But I was like, Amy Cuddy, wow, Cuddy Cudworth, brilliant. And I read that book on the a flight to Singapore, which was a fascinating book. But it changes your physiology. So it
yeah,
changes everything. Yeah, honestly, the power pose, because then we're going into actually which I do training with is we're changing our story, our language, our association, and our physicality. And once we change that, we create a different emotional response within our body. And it's an absolutely fascinating thing to do, to be fair. So I think that's absolutely fascinating. So now let's go. Give me some because communication is such a great um big thing for us to talk about. I'm very conscious of time and things like that, Angie. What would you like to bring to this podcast that is going to help somebody change that fear of speaking?
Yeah, I think I want to tell people that it's possible to be different or just to feel different. And it's also okay to just be a bit anxious, but just do it. And with practice comes confidence. So it's a good idea to go out and do things rather than hiding away or, what some people do. It's really, you go out, you do it in small steps. Maybe you decide what is the easiest thing to start with. It doesn't need to be a speech in front of hundreds of people. For
Yeah,
example, it can be just a small thing. Maybe just practice in front of the mirror by yourself and get that feeling that you can do it.
fantastic. So talk about an experience you've had with a client and that journey you took them on.
I had a client who struggled with speaking in a Zoom meeting online,
Yeah,
and I helped them that they just felt able to do it because obviously that's a bit different from doing it in person. So, and a couple of years ago that we all went online and online meetings. Some people struggle to get heard and to get the attention, maybe to raise their hand in that meeting and to actually do that. So I help them to become more confident around that.
it's brutal how the mind plays so many tricks on us, isn't it? To
Hmm.
give us those feelings of anxiety that we can't even raise our hand on a Zoom meeting. That the mind just and the beliefs that we have, the beliefs keep us stuck. And it's so important to have somebody out there that can get us through that process because in a world of watching podcasts and having chat GPT where answers are out there, the difference between that and working with someone that's gone through it. Have you gone through a time where you felt you couldn't communicate confidently?
Yes, I think so. I was very shy as a child, and
And how did that show up in your life for talking and being non-assertive?
yeah, people told me I was not assertive, particularly at interviews. And over time, I learned that I have to do something about that, and so that's how I got into this,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. And whereabouts in Scotland are you living now?
I'm in Hamilton in South Lanarkshire,
Oh, very nice. Beautiful.
near,
Do love
near,
Scotland. We do. We love
near,
Scotland.
near
Absolutely.
Glasgow. Yeah.
Very nice. So, Dr. Anchi, let's leave us with one pearl of wisdom. One pearl of wisdom for somebody going through that anxiety of not being able to communicate. Just give us a pearl of wisdom that somebody needs to know and learn that they can go, thank you, Auntie. Thank you so much for helping me through something I was going through. Hit me with a pearl of wisdom.
There is hope. They don't need to stay the way they are. People can change, even if it's just a tiny bit, but over time, you will be surprised what happens, and then you can be different, and you can be assertive.
Fantastic. I love it. And where can we find you? I know there's a QR code there, but you are in the RBC network, I believe.
Yeah, I was involved with them, but you can find me on almost all social media. I've got a website, assertivevoices.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. Dr. Anchi, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. It's been a pleasure having you on. You know, communication or that lack of confidence in communication can cost us lots in business, in our future possibilities of getting promoted. I know I've struggled with confident conversations in the past, and to be fair, Angie, I still do sometimes because I have to question myself, going, "Am I too aggressive in this point?" Because I feel like I'm a very confident speaker, but I genuinely have that place of, I think I have something that would be quite useful in this situation. May I speak my mind? And these are things that I've had to learn myself, to go from being aggressive and too loud to being that person that gets listened to. Because there's a difference. Just because people are shouting and aggressive, it doesn't mean to say that people are hearing you. It doesn't mean to say people are listening. And when you work with someone like Dr. Angie to help you understand the differences between tonalities of voice and how we can change them from quiet and timid into assertive and confident, you'll find that different things in your life change as well. And that's the power of working with someone like Dr. Angie. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Is there anything else you would like to share there, Dr. Angie?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. As always, big love from Cuddy, and we'll see you on the next episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed. And remember, there's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive. And the only difference is confidence.